Hello everybody, Maven here, and as a longtime Destiny player, I know a god roll when I see one. When a new weapon drops, I just look at the API and I look at its possible rolls, and usually I can spot its god rolls and its implications in one quick glance. But for the first time, a weapon has finally stumped me, and that weapon is the Timelost Fatebringer that was just reissued from the Vault of Glass raid. This weapon has so many PvE viable perks that it's hard to determine the perfect roll. So in this video, we're going to test out every single possible roll to try to get to the bottom of this. So let's get to it. Hope you enjoy. This video is sponsored by Advanced GG, the #1 gaming supplement in the world, and they just came out with an exclusive limited time flavor for St. Patrick's Day. So if you want to try it out, use code MAVEN at checkout for 15% off your order, link down below. Thank you. So let's take a look at the possible rolls of the Fatebringer, and before anything, yes, your Fatebringer has to be time lost if you want it to be absolutely optimal. For example, if I put on an Adept Backup Mag mod, I can reach 14 in the magazine, but if it wasn't time lost and I had to settle for a normal Backup Mag, that would put me to 13 in the magazine, making it so I have to run something like Tactical Mag if I want to reach that maximum 14. And the same goes for the Found Verdict, Visions of Confluence, and Corrective Measure. They gotta be time lost to be optimal, but you can settle for a non-time lost Hezen Vengeance and Praetor's Revenge. Anyways, I digress. Let's talk about these perks. So in the left column, we got Osmosis, Opening Shot, Keep Away, Rewind Rounds, To the Pain, Kinetic Tremors, and Explosive Payload. And in the right column, we got Frenzy, Eye of the Storm, Firefly, Elemental Honing, One for All, Magnificent Howl, and Precision Instrument. So the best PvE perks in the left column are clearly going to be Rewind Rounds, Kinetic Tremors, Explosive Payload, and in the right column, it's going to be Frenzy, Firefly, Elemental Honing, and One for All. Now, we did test out Precision Instrument in the Exalted Truth God roll video from last week, but that's because it didn't really have that much options, but this one does, so this perk's going to be kind of left in the dust. And we'll also try out Magnificent Howl just to humor it, but the other 4 perks are definitely better options. So here I have every combination of the aforementioned rolls. We got Kinetic Tremors along with Firefly, Elemental Honing, One for All, Frenzy, Magnificent Howl. We got Rewind Rounds along with Elemental Honing, Magnificent Howl, Frenzy, and then we have Explosive Payload with Honing, One for All, Frenzy. Like, we have literally everything here, so we're going to test it all out. Now we're going to be doing our testing once again in the Hydroponics Delta Lost Sector, just like we did in the Exalted Truth video. And for those who don't know why, this is a Sunshot Body Shot against an ad in the Root of Nightmares raid, and this is a Sunshot Body Shot against an ad in the Hydroponics Delta. As you can see, ads in Hydroponics Delta are twice as tanky as raid ads, making it a great place to test endgame weapons and builds. Now, to save us some time, we're going to kick things off with Explosive Payload and One for All, just to prove a point that One for All is not worth it, so we can eliminate it from the rest of the video. So if there's any perk that you're going to pair with One for All, above all else, it's going to be Explosive Payload, because that explosive shot has that splash damage to hit multiple ads at once, making it the easiest method of proccing One for All on this gun. So for those who don't know, One for All wants you to hit 3 separate targets within 3 seconds of each other, and when you do, you get a 35% damage buff for 10 seconds. Pretty hefty buff, but this is one of the most aggravating damage perks in the entire game because of its activation requirements. The buff always runs out when you need it the most, and then there are no ads around when you need it procced. And the gameplay is a good example of that. In that first main room, there's that tanky Colossus dude, and I wanted One for All ready for him, but the buff ran out, so I had to take a detour to proc it and circle back to him. And detours happen all the dang time when you use One for All, and that's what I hate about it. It's an extremely hit or miss perk, and it lets me down every time I use it. So for that reason, my ideal Fatebringer God roll will not and shall not contain this perk, so it will be eliminated. Next perk on the chopping block will be Magnificent Howl, and we're going to be pairing it with Rewind Rounds for maximum effect. So Mag Howl is the perk where you get stacks for getting precision kills, which will generate these bonus damage rounds that double your crit damage. And precision kills with these Mag Howl shots will refund the Mag Howl shots so you can keep it going. And the point of pairing it with Rewind Rounds is that you get a massive mag size, basically double mag size, so you get more time to actually charge your Mag Howl stacks. But the problem is, the ads are so tanky in Hydroponics Delta that they survive a single double damage crit shot. So there's really no point. If you're going to use this perk, you're going to want to one shot to the crit. So therefore, would this perk be better in lower level content? No, because in lower level content, you want ad clear perks, not single target damage perks. So this perk is just extremely lackluster and needs a massive overhaul. Honestly, just take away all the crit requirements. It should just be that kills grant bonus damage shots, period. No crits required, but also balance that in PvP so you can't 2-tap without Radiant. Anyways, let's move on to our next perk on the chopping block, which is Firefly. Same issue as Magnificent Howl, but kind of the opposite. This perk is taking up the slot that would otherwise be a damage perk. And the problem is, without a damage perk, your crit damage is also lackluster, therefore Firefly's got no support. You're going to want to use this perk in content where the trash mobs will die in a single unbuffed crit. And then it's viable because it'll do what it's meant to do. But then again, are you really going to use the Fatebringer in mega easy content? Probably not. You're going to use things like the Graviton Lance, the Trinity Ghoul, the Sunshot. You get it. You're probably going to use ad clear heavy weapons, not a Fatebringer. So I just think there's no place for Firefly. Sure, it's wowed me in some places, but in most situations, I'd rather just have a damage perk. And now we're starting to get to the good stuff. The role we're going to try out next here is Rewind Rounds with Elemental Honing. Elemental Honing is a brand new perk. This is dealing damage with unique elements, charges stacks of this perk, stacks up to 5 times, lasts 20 seconds. The damage values are different for energy weapons, but for kinetics, it's as follows. 1 stack gives you 10% bonus damage, 2 stacks gives you 20%, 3 stacks is 30%, and from here on out, we start to get diminishing returns. At 4 stacks is 35%, and 5 stacks it's 40%. So those first 3 stacks granting 10% bonus damage each are going to be the optimal here, guys. TBH, don't worry about going for the maximum 5 stacks because not only is it a hassle, but it's also not super worth jumping through hoops for the extra 10%. Just go for those initial 3 stacks because those are the big ones. And that's what I'm doing in the gameplay because that's going to be more realistic. And as it is, this perk is amazing. For minimal effort, we get 30% bonus damage for 20 seconds. And it's decently easy to proc. And another thing you can do to try to exploit this, I'll show you here against Carl. So I'm going to get my 3 stacks as normal. I'm going to get my buff. And when I see my buff is about to run out, I can actually go and extend for that 4th stack, putting me up to a 35% damage buff, and what do you know, it refreshes the full 20 seconds. And if it's enhanced, it's actually 23 seconds, which is huge. And once again, oh no, my buff is gonna run out. Guess I'll go for that 5th stack, and boom, 40% damage buff for another 23 seconds. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. It's at least an A tier perk. Whether or not it's S tier is subjective. Now, back to Hydroponics Delta. We're going to try Explosive Payload with Elemental Honing to really double down on that damage. For those who don't know, Explosive Payload, in addition to having that splash damage for good ad clear, it also just gives you free damage. You overall get 15% more damage to the body and 10% more to the crit. It is the definition of free damage. Plus, it gives you that pseudo-infinite range, since the explosive portion of your damage has no fall off. And it also just feels better to hip fire with explosive payload weapons, since there's lesser downside for missing crits, since your body shot damage has a higher bonus. Also, explosive payload weapons are much better to jump with because you can just shoot the enemy's toes and they'll take that splash damage guaranteed. So explosive payload has a lot going for it, and it's a very solid option. But is it better than rewind rounds, which basically doubles your mag size? Again, feeds into the headline of the video. I honestly do not know which one I like more between these two because they both bring plenty to the table, but you be the judge. But if there's one thing that I enjoy better than these 2 perks, it's Kinetic Tremors. This role is Kinetic Tremors Elemental Honing. And one thing you should note before going forward is that Kinetic Tremors could be better than it appears in today's gameplay, because normal Kinetic Tremors procs on hand cannons in 6 shots, but it procs in 5 shots when you enhance it. In this video, I did not have the enhanced version. Thanks, Bungie, for making raid spoils extremely tough to get. Please, I'm begging you, just make every raid encounter drop 10 spoils instead of 5, regardless of if the raid is old, regardless of if it's not the weekly rotator raid, and regardless of whether you already completed it. And grant even more for master instances. They just need to be way more abundant than they currently are because it's kind of ridiculous right now. Anyways, I digress. Kinetic Tremors is awesome, giving you insane single target damage, especially when paired with Elemental Honing, because those Tremors procs do benefit from the Elemental Honing damage. And similar to Explosive Payload, Kinetic Tremors also gives pseudo infinite range because those Tremors procs have no fall off. So you got utility, you got damage, You somewhat got ad clear with those Tremors procs. It's just kind of a jack of all trades role, and I kinda love it. But now we come to my all-time favorite damage perk, Frenzy. Explosive Payload Frenzy has always been my favorite role on a hand cannon just because it's like the ultimate jack of all trades role. It does everything. You got range, you got damage, you got ad clear, you got the maxed out reload speed from Frenzy, so there's lesser downtime. It's just an extremely trustworthy role for any level of content. You can't go wrong. And that's the god role I opted for on the Midnight Coup. The Midnight Coup also does happen to get Explosive Payload with Kinetic Tremors, and that's a little overkill on utility. I'd rather pair it with Frenzy for more of that neutral damage since Frenzy gives plus 15% damage, and the 100 reload speed bonus always makes any weapon feel super smooth and crispy to use. But one role the Midnight Coup doesn't get is Kinetic Tremors with Frenzy, because on the Midnight Coup those two perks are in the same slot, but on the Fatebringer they're in different slots. So now we can have that insane single target damage with the maxed out reload, with the ad clear, and with the infinite range. It does everything the Explosive Frenzy role can, except heavier hitting against chunkier targets. And once again, I do not have enhanced Kinetic Tremors in this video. I could be proccing it in 5 shots instead of 6. So in a very difficult content like Master or Grandmaster content, you'll basically proc Tremors on everything. There may not be a hand cannon champion mod right now, but there will be in the future. And when that time comes, this role will be an absolute monster. And to be honest, I'm not really ever going to use a legendary hand cannon in easy content anyways. In my opinion, legendary hand cannons are meant to be used as high-level utility weapons. So a role like this is absolute peak. And Enemy's Hydroponics Delta runs Kinetic Tremors and Frenzy definitely felt the most smooth for sure. Yeah, Elemental Honing can be nuts and easily gives you double the amount of damage that Frenzy does, but with Frenzy, you don't even have to worry about proccing those elements, and the 100 reload speed bonus kind of feels incredible. So is it worth the 15% damage trade-off? You be the judge. But if you wanted a role that really doubles down on ease of use, we come to rewind rounds with Frenzy. Because what's smoother than having plus 100 reload speed? Of course, having double mag size in addition to having maxed out reload speed. This is the role that just does not slow down. It's non-stop. Now once again, if I'm going to use a legendary hand cannon, it's for high level utility and not for easy content. But I do see a lot of blueberries using legendary hand cannons in easy content, so apparently I'm in the minority here. So if I had to put myself in the shoes of a blueberry, this is a Fatebringer role I would probably use because I believe this role will shine the most in easy content since it just does not stop firing between the double mag and the maxed out reload. In to add heavy content, you want as little downtime as possible, and this is the role that gives you that. But now we got one final test to do here against Carl because there's one question we gotta answer. What perk gives you more DPS, Kinetic Tremors or Rewind Rounds? Which one is more worth it? Now we're gonna do a side-by-side test here against Carl, and we're pairing each of these perks along with Elemental Honing ×3 to get a 30% damage buff. Now yes, I'm aware that these takes weren't absolutely perfect. I missed a ton of crits. I also had to move around and stay alive, but at least it's more realistic this way. And it ended up not really mattering because it was kind of a landslide in favor of Kinetic Tremors. And for the third time saying this, my Kinetic Tremors roll isn't even enhanced. We could be proccing it twice per mag, but instead we need to roll over that progress to the following mag. Now before the next test, let's talk about the origin trait Timelost Magazine that says your final blows give increased super energy, and after your super ends, your mag size is doubled for 20 seconds, and your weapon is auto-reloaded. But this origin trait has a hidden piece of text that not even the API tells you, and I'll show you here. So watch my body shot damage against Carl. I'm doing 3241 damage to the body, and I'm gonna pop my super and proc Timelost Magazine, and now I'm doing 3890 to the body, which is a 20% damage buff. It tells you nowhere in the perk description that it buffs your damage, but it does. And just in case you thought something else might be giving me that buff, here's proof. Watch as my crit does 6900 and the body does 3800. Then Timelost Magazine runs out, as you can see in the bottom left, and suddenly I'm doing 5800 to the crit and 3200 to the body. So yes, it is indeed Timelost Magazine that was giving me that 20% damage buff. So please fix the API, Bungie. But now we're gonna do another side-by-side comparison, but with Timelost Magazine. We're using the same rolls as before, kinetic rewind, both with elemental honing ×3. And I expected the results to be different. I tested time loss with rewind rounds against Carl before, and it gave me literally infinite mag size. When I dumped my 28 round mag on him, it filled back up to 28 when rewind rounds procced. But this time it only went to 16. So I don't know what happened because I definitely didn't miss my shots. So I think Bungie might have shadow nerfed it. So because of that, our DPS on the rewind rounds roll didn't really change at all with or without Time Lost Magazine, whereas we did get a decent boost to our kinetic tremors roll. So it was even more of a landslide than before. So with all of the testing we've done, I think I've come to a conclusion on which roll is my god roll. Drum roll, please. Kinetic Tremors Frenzy is my god roll Fatebringer Timelost because it gives me everything I need. It checks all the boxes, and I know it can do something for almost every situation. Infinite range, maxed out reload speed, great single target damage, and Tremors being a pseudo Adclair perk in some situations. But also, Kinetic Tremors Elemental Honing is my secondary god roll if I'm using the right build to support it, so probably something prismatic. And I don't really think it gets much better than this for a legendary hand cannon. I think the only way we could compete with this Fatebringer is if one day we get an arc hand cannon with explosive payload and jolting feedback. But until then, do yourself a favor and farm Master Templar next time it rotates around. It's probably the easiest and quickest raid encounter to farm in the entire game. Anyone can do it, so good luck with that. And that is going to do it for the video. It was kind of a long one. I hope it has helped you out. If it did, then maybe you can help me out in return by simply hitting that like button. It goes a long way. And if you are new here, please consider subscribing. Would love to have you stick around for more videos on the way. And remember to check out our sponsor, Advanced GG. Use code MAVEN at checkout for 15% off your order for a limited time for the St. Patrick's Day event. Link to that's down below, and I will catch you in the next video. See you later.